Good evening. So you are watching the Polyglot Engineer channel. Hi, my name's David, and tonight we're going to be talking about 7 things you probably didn't know you could do with JavaScript. So when I was going through and doing my research, I was actually kind of surprised that at some of these things, but these are things I've seen over the years that I just found astonishing that you could actually use JavaScript to do this. So it reminds me a little bit of Atwood's Law. If you're not familiar with Atwood's Law states that if an application can be written in JavaScript, eventually it will be written in JavaScript. So let's talk about 7 things that you can do or you can write in JavaScript that you didn't think you could use JavaScript for. Number 1, image processing. Now, there's a library I like to use called GIMP that is written essentially just in pure JavaScript. And you can use this to resize images, run filters on them, change file formats. It's all written in JavaScript. And I was surprised that this was something that you could actually do in JavaScript, but it turns out you can. Another thing you can do is program robots. And it turns out JavaScript is actually a good language to do this for because one of the things that robots you have to worry about is sensor and sensor lock. And since JavaScript is a synchronous language, it actually turns out that if you're writing software for specifically around microcontrollers and sensors and stuff like that, that this is something that that you can do. And on top of it, there's actually some microcontroller boards that are actually written specifically to run JavaScript. So it's something else you might be interested in taking a look at. System scripting. So I think people are used to doing system scripting using Bash or even Python, but a lot of people do system scripts using JavaScript. Another thing, this is one I found very surprising, is machine learning. So it turns out there's actually a couple libraries you can use for doing machine learning. One of them is called brain.js, and you can actually run this in the browser as well. Another one is Tensorflow Js. So if you're familiar with machine learning, AI, Google has this framework they call Tensorflow. It's mainly a Python thing, but they have a port of it that runs in JavaScript. So it's another one you should check out. Our next item is mobile applications. So I'm sure a lot of people have probably heard of React Native. There's another one called NativeScript. It's also, I think, gaining some popularity. The thing that's nice about these frameworks is that if you're already familiar with React, as an example, you can use React Native to build native applications for iOS and Android. And you can do essentially the same thing with NativeScript. You write all your logic in JavaScript. But with NativeScript, you can actually use a couple of different frameworks. So it gives you the option of using Vue or React even, Angular. There's a number of different frameworks that you can use for writing your applications. And it's all essentially, with React Native specifically, they have a JavaScript bridge that you can use for executing all the logic. Something else that's also interesting about that is with React Native, they actually wrote their own JavaScript engine. So if you're familiar with Chrome or Node.js, the primary engine that's used in those browsers and runtimes is the V8 engine. But they actually wrote one, I think, called Hermes for specifically for doing all of the JavaScript on iOS and Android. So that's another one to take a look at. Our next one is video games. Yes, believe it or not, you can write video games in JavaScript. There's actually a lot of different frameworks for doing this. But one of the things I saw that's pretty interesting over the last couple of years is that there was a project where they actually ported a 3D first-person game over in JavaScript using something called Inscription. And since then, WebAssembly has become a standard that will run in Node and also in all the modern browsers. And so what that means essentially is that you can take the programming language of your choice, let's say it's Rust or C++, something like that, and then you can target WebAssembly. So that means that you can create this binary essentially that will run either in the browser or in Node.js and execute that code inside of this runtime. So, and because of that, they're doing some interesting things with games where they're taking a game that might have been written in C++ and they're porting that so that it runs in WASM. So that's another thing you can do. And then the last item that I selected was musical instruments. Actually, using the Web API, you can connect MIDI or Web MIDI based musical instruments up to a web browser. So that was the last thing in there, something you didn't think you could necessarily do, but you can actually hook up MIDI up to the browser and do music with it. So those are 7 different things that you might have been surprised you can do with JavaScript. If you have any more that you think might be interesting, please leave a comment. I like to cover those as well on this channel. And if you like this, please give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you can give it a thumbs down, but please give it a thumbs up. And I can do more content like this. All right, have a nice evening.